In these times of turmoil, there's a need for a constant, an undeniable truth, something to help us navigate through this world. That is the North Star, Polaris.
Hi, my name's Andie Tillison. I'm from a band called The Tangent, and you are watching LiveProg. You rock!
Welcome to LiveProg, the channel that is all about the music that we call progressive. I am Marcel Haster. Now, you probably heard that The Tangent is about to release a brand new album, their 13th studio album. Since 2002, the band, led by Andie Tillison, has released 12 studio albums and built up a reputation for delivering excellent albums. And the fact that over the past few years the lineup has been stabilized, that also contributes even more to that. Now, this 13th album, To Follow Polaris, of course will be no different than that. Or will it? Because there is something different about this album, and you probably have picked up on that if you haven't been hiding behind a rock. Even I picked up on that, and I've been away for a long time. The name on the cover says The Tangent for one, so we're thinking, hey, is this a different band? What's going on here? If you've been following The Tangent, it will be of course no surprise, you know it of course, but in case you haven't, in case you have been living under a rock or have been away for a while or for whatever reason missed this very important piece of information about The Tangent, this brand new album is entirely created by Andie Tillison himself. Due to various scheduling conflicts and other, well, probably other things that happened, I mean, you know, life can be crazy sometimes, it didn't work out for the band to come together and make a new album. So it was agreed that Andie would do one on his own. It's not intended to be a solo album, that's why it's still called The Tangent. The 4-1 bit is to indicate that there is something different about this album. It is more of an experiment that Andie wanted to do to see what the outcome would be. Well, the outcome is To Follow Polaris. Now you can imagine that an undertaking like this means doing a lot more than just writing the album, playing the keyboards on it, and singing on it. You know, there's so much more, because in addition to those things, Andie would have to play guitars, bass, drums, even wind instruments, because normally we have Theo Travis doing flute and all kinds of things on the album. That is something that Andie has to do. But he did even more than that. He recorded the album, he mixed the album, he even created the artwork for it. So it's a huge undertaking. If this would be a solo album, which it is not, I have to stress that, it's not a solo album, but if it were a solo album, Andie would bring a whole new meaning to the idea of a solo album. It is that good. Like I said, the end result is To Follow Polaris. 5 brand new songs. That's not entirely true because the album has 6 tracks. The 6th track is a radio edit version from the first song on the album. I'll get into that in a moment. And then again, that's not entirely true because there is a bonus track of 17 minutes, so that makes 7 songs. Like I said, Polaris is a metaphor for a constant, a truth, something we can look for, something that gives us, you know, hope and maybe even a little bit of guidance. And this is what the first song on the album is about, The North Sky. Now, like I said, there is an edited version, which is quite punchy, which is out on the internet. You can watch it on YouTube. And what I like about that is that Andie created a video with that. He also did that, you know, he's done so many things. But in that video, you see him play all these different instruments. And that gives you an idea of how he went about in creating this album, which is very cool, of course, because, you know, it gives you a little bit of a clue as to how much work it is doing this all by himself. I really love that song, but what I love even more is when you go to the album and you listen to the first song, The North Sky, and there you have the full version, which is about 11 minutes. So you can imagine if you heard that song, there's 2 times more to be enjoyed in that full song. And especially when you listen to the instrumental parts on that song. I really love that very much. There you can hear all the instruments that Andie is playing, and I say that is nothing short of impressive. But if there's one thing that stood out for me in that track, it has to be the bass. The bass sounds so good on that song. I really love that very much. If we move on, I'm not going to go through every song, but there are a couple of songs that yeah, get a reaction from me, stood out a little bit for me. A like in the darkness. It's not a light in the darkness, but a like. And I think you start to get where this is going, because we live in a world of social media. I would almost say we live in a world that is dominated by likes and algorithms, and the more likes you get, the more favorable the algorithm is for you to show your content to someone else. And that is something that a lot of people struggle with it. You know, do they put in a lot of effort to get those likes, to get their content out there? And especially for musicians, it can be a real challenge to get their music out there, and especially in a world where we live in right now. So it opens a bit melancholical. It's not a really happy song, but it does, you know, kind of move into a solid prog song. Content-wise, social media, you get it everywhere. I really love this song very much. The next one is kind of similar in topic in that, but then it's not about social media. The third track on the album is called The Fine Line, which is more about the media, how the media especially handles the truth. Is there any truth left in this world? And despite the fact that the subject is not very happy, very, you know, bright, the music of that song sounds a lot more uplifting. And I really like how this song evolves. There's a part where the saxophone comes in, and again, you know, I'm picturing in my mind, it is Andie doing that, and it's really amazing. I found an interesting line in that song. That there's a lot to discover in the lyrics. You really check out the lyrics once you have the album, because it's really, yeah, there's so much in it. But there's this line that says, all the tyrants, all the despots, all the musks. That's one example. Andie is not afraid to name names and point fingers into institutions and to people in this one. That's what I like about it, and that's something he always have done. They have the power, but they don't fool us. No, they got the platforms and they want more. Well, think of Musk buying Twitter, turning it into his own thing, wanting more. But they need content, and theirs is such a bore, you know? So yeah, I love that. That fits so much in what we see and what kind of world we live in right now. I really got to catch my breath, because the fourth track on the album, the Anachronism, is a massive 21-minute epic track. And I'm not gonna say much about that, because you really need to hear that. This song is so incredible. It's so wow. I'm really speechless about this one. I know that when I was listening to the song, I was like, it was done. It was like, man, I just skipped it back and started over again. And I listened to that track a couple of times after each other, because this song is so great, so fantastic. And again, nothing short of impressive what Andie does here. When you hear it, you will listen and you will be amazed. But again, also lyrically, there are a few interesting points in it, and those I did want to mention, especially again since the time we live in now, because the Anachronism is a song that deals about democracy, about elections, about who you vote for, and what will happen with that vote. When you put your vote in, what happens with it? And he makes some interesting observations in that. One of them is, it's just a single line, some twats decided we needed a war now. That's exactly how it happens in this world. Government leaders decide they want to start a war. It's not the people. They want to live a happy life. And there's another line that I also found interesting, and especially, you know, you cast your vote. What happens to your vote? Andie writes here, we hand the power to committee chairs, they set the taxes, they order the bombs, define our bodies and get it wrong. They say who's legal, they always are, and whether wokeness has gone too far, they set boundaries of what is sex, all with the mandate of fucking X. And X being the vote that people cast. So, you know, so much interesting, not just musically, but also lyrically, so much interesting things to be found in this one. Then we have another interesting track, the single, which is also out on YouTube. You can also listen to that one. That is a 27-year-old Parallel or 90 Degrees track, which Andie reworked and put on this album. So if you are familiar with the original, compare it. I'm not familiar with the original, so I don't know, but you know, like I said, the sixth track on the album is the radio edit of North Sky, and as a bonus track, 17.5 minutes long, Tea at Betty's Simulation, where it's an instrumental extravaganza. Everything you can imagine that Andie can bring, he brings it. What I noticed is that lyrically it is a punk protest album, and I want to read one line from this booklet, which I think is very suitable, because it kind of says what the Tangent actually is all about. It says here, the Tangent is a band that writes music for the times we live in. They have done that and they will keep on doing that. So that's why I say lyrically it is a punk protest album, but musically it is a prog masterpiece. When you listen to it, you will hear it. It is a phenomenal album. Really, I'm very impressed. If you had any concerns that this album might sound any different than the other Tangent albums we already know, put these worries to rest. To Follow Polaris is a very fine addition to the existing The Tangent discography. It will bring you a lot of listening pleasure. I've been listening to this album for roughly a week, and he was kind enough to send me the files of this album so I could make this video for you guys. I'm gonna buy the album as soon as it comes out because I want to have a physical copy, of course. But I've been listening to it so much that I lost track of how many times I listened to it, and I noticed that every time I put it on, I still am blown away by its beauty, by how amazing this album is. Each time I listen, it keeps on growing to me, and there's so much more I could say about this album. I could go into how Andie sings, the many keyboard passages, solos, synth solos, everything, how captivating this whole album is, that you will want to listen to it again when it's finished. But all I can say is, make sure you get a copy of this album. Make sure that when it is released, you buy it, because you will be doing yourself a favor, because you get some amazing music, and you will helping the band, because the more albums are sold, the more this band can continue working on another album. So, you know, it's important, especially in times like this, to support the band. So please buy the album, if possible directly from the band, so that they get the money from it and they can use that money to, well, make a living and also work on another album. In the beginning I mentioned that Andie Tillison saw the making of To Follow Polaris by himself as an experiment. Now that the album is out, I would say experiment successful. But what about you? Do you agree with that? What do you think of To Follow Polaris, and what is your favorite song on the album? Let's talk about that in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you all back with a new video.